The creature's grip on Captain Lee tightened as it felt the approach of human ships. Its many voices spoke at once, creating a sound like breaking glass. "You have doomed your species. When they arrive, I will feed on them all." Lee smiled, even though the creature's tendrils were crushing his ribs. "You still do not understand, do you?" "Understand what?" "They are not coming to rescue me. They are coming to finish what we started." The first ship arrived 6 hours later. The TCS Soul, a heavy cruiser with enough firepower to crack a small moon. Captain Lee's warning had reached them just as they were finishing a patrol near the border. More ships followed. The Busan, the Daegu, the Incheon's sister ship Gwangju. Even civilian vessels changed course to help. Cargo ships, passenger liners, mining barges. Any human vessel that could carry weapons. Dr. Park watched the ships arrive on her scanner. She was still fighting the creature's tendrils, but now she was smiling. 37 ships and counting, she reported. The creature picked the wrong species to hunt. Lieutenant Kim had found the colony's communication center. She was coordinating with the arriving fleet. "All ships, this is Lieutenant Kim Ha-na. The hostile entity is located in Mining Shaft 7. It exists partially outside normal space, but conventional weapons can hurt it if you hit it hard enough." Engineer Choi was still burning away the organic residue. His plasma cutter was running low on power, but he had found the colony's industrial equipment. "Captain, I have an idea. The mining lasers are designed to cut through solid rock, if we can get them all working at once." The creature felt the ships positioning themselves above the planet. It tried to retreat deeper into the mining tunnels, but Yoon Jae-min blocked its path with a mining vehicle. "You are not going anywhere," Jae-min said. "You ate my friends. You ate my neighbors. Now you pay for it." The creature's voices became desperate. "I have existed since before your son was born. I have fed on civilizations that built wonders you cannot imagine. You cannot destroy me." "Maybe not," Lee said from within the creature's grip. "But we can try." The first orbital bombardment began. Energy beams from the Soul punched through the planet's crust like spears of light. They struck the creature directly, and its screams shook the entire mining complex. But the humans were just getting started. The Busan fired its main guns. The Daegu launched missiles that burrowed deep into the ground before exploding. Even the civilian ships contributed, using mining lasers and construction equipment as weapons. The creature tried to escape into its other dimension, but something was wrong. The massive assault was disrupting its ability to phase between realities. It was trapped in normal space where human weapons could reach it. "Impossible," it gasped through its many mouths. "No species has ever. You should be paralyzed with fear." "Fear is what we felt at first," Park said, shooting another tendril with her sidearm. "But humans do not stay afraid for long. We get angry, and when we get angry, we get creative." Choi had connected every mining laser in the complex to work together. "Captain, get clear if you can. This is going to hurt." Lee was still trapped in the creature's tendrils, but he had managed to work his knife free. He began cutting at the organic matter that held him. "Do it, Choi. Do not worry about me." Kim coordinated the final attack. "All ships, focus fire on my coordinates. All mining equipment, fire on my mark. 3, 2, 1. Mark." The combined firepower of 37 human ships struck the creature at the exact same moment as every mining laser in the colony. The underground chamber filled with light brighter than the surface of a star. The creature's scream was no longer just sound. It was a psychic wave that reached across dimensions. Every predator like it, hunting in the dark between stars, felt its pain and fear. For the first time in millions of years, one of their kind was losing. The organic residue began to dissolve. The trapped colonists fell free, gasping and coughing but alive. Lee cut himself loose from the dying tendrils and helped them to safety. The creature was shrinking. The energy that had allowed it to exist in multiple dimensions at once was being burned away by human weapons. It was becoming smaller and weaker with each passing second. "This is not possible," it whispered. "I am eternal. I am inevitable." "Nothing is inevitable," Lee said, "especially not when humans decide to stop it." The creature made one last desperate attempt. It tried to send out a signal to its own kind, calling for help the same way the colonists had called into space weeks ago. But Park had anticipated this. She had been studying the creature's energy signature, and she had figured out how to jam its communications. "Not today," she said, activating her jamming device. The creature's signal died before it could reach the stars. With a final fading scream, the creature collapsed. its body dissolved into harmless organic matter. The nightmare that had haunted the galaxy for eons was finally dead. Lee stood over the remains, breathing hard. His ribs were broken and his hands were burned, but he was alive. They were all alive. Is it over? Jamin asked. For now, Lee said. But there might be others out there. Kim was already thinking ahead. We need to set up a new protocol. Every human colony, every ship, every station needs to know about this threat. Park was examining the creature's remains. We can learn from this, study how it existed between dimensions, maybe find ways to detect others like it. Choi was looking at the rescued colonists. Most of them would recover, but they would need help. The colony can be rebuilt. Better than before, with defenses against things like this. Over the following weeks, news of the battle spread across human space. The story grew in the telling, but the important parts remained the same. Humans had faced a cosmic horror that had fed on civilizations for millions of years, and they had killed it. New protocols were established. Every distress signal would be answered by humans first. Every colony would have defenses against extra-dimensional threats. And every ship would carry weapons designed to hurt things that should not exist. The galaxy was a dangerous place. It was full of predators and monsters and things that fed on fear and suffering, but now it had something else. It had humans who refused to be prey. The message went out across the stars, carried by every human ship and broadcast from every human world. If you are in trouble, call for help. We will answer. And if something terrible answers instead, we will come for that too. They had sent a distress signal and something terrifying had arrived, but it was not what had answered the call. It was what came to make sure nothing like this would ever answer another call again. The creature stopped making its laughing sound. Captain Lee felt something cold creep into his mind. It was not just fear. It was deeper than that. It was the feeling that nothing he did would ever matter again. Do not look at it directly, Yoon Jae-min whispered from behind the mining equipment. When you look at it, it gets stronger. It feeds on what you feel. Dr. Park kept her eyes on her scanner instead of the creature. Captain, the readings are incredible. This thing exists partially outside normal space. That is why our weapons might not work. Lieutenant Kim tried to aim her rifle, but her hands were shaking. Sir, I cannot keep steady. Something is making me feel. She could not finish the sentence. Engineer Choi was backing toward the tunnel entrance. We need to leave now. Whatever this thing is, we are not ready for it. But Lee found he could not move his feet. The cold feeling in his mind was getting stronger. He could hear whispers that were not quite words. They told him that resistance was useless, that death was certain, that he should just give up. The creature began to rise. It was even bigger than Lee had thought. The organic residue peeled away from its body like old skin. Underneath was something that hurt to look at. It had too many angles, too many surfaces that bent in directions that should not exist. Long tendrils reached out from its center. They moved through the air like they were swimming in water. At the end of each tendril was something that looked like a mouth. But the mouths had teeth that were not quite teeth, and they whispered in languages that had never been spoken by any living thing. It comes from between the stars, Jae-min said, his voice breaking. It follows distress signals. When civilizations call for help, it answers. It has been doing this for millions of years. Park's scanner was beeping rapidly. The thing is generating some kind of field. It affects brain chemistry, makes people feel hopeless and afraid. One of the tendrils reached toward Kim. She tried to shoot it, but her weapon would not fire. The tendril touched her arm and she screamed. Not from pain, but from pure terror. Lee could see her eyes go wide as the creature fed on her fear. Kim, Lee shouted. He tried to run to her, but his legs felt like they were made of stone. The cold feeling in his mind was becoming a roar of despair. The creature's many mouths began to speak. The words came from everywhere at once. You called? Across the dark. You begged for salvation. And I came. I always come. We did not call you, Lee said through gritted teeth. They did. The creature gestured with another tendril toward the shapes trapped inside its body. Lee could see them now more clearly. Thousands of colonists suspended in the organic residue like insects in amber. They were still alive, but their faces showed only fear and hopelessness. They called into the void, and the void answered, as it always does. Choi had reached the tunnel entrance, but he stopped there. Captain, I cannot leave you. Go! Lee ordered. Get back to the ship. Warn them, but Choi shook his head. We came here together. We leave together. The creature laughed again. Its tendrils reached for all of them now. Park tried to run but tripped over her equipment. A tendril wrapped around her leg, and suddenly she was screaming about things that had not happened yet. About watching her friends die. About the failure of everything she had ever tried to do. Lee felt the tendril touch his shoulder. Immediately his mind was flooded with images. Every mistake he had ever made. Every person he had failed to save. Every moment when he had not been good enough, strong enough, smart enough. But then something strange happened. As the despair filled his mind, Lee found something else underneath it. Something the creature had not expected. Anger. Pure, burning anger at this thing that fed on suffering. At this monster that answered, calls for help only to cause more pain. At this predator that had been hunting innocent people across the galaxy for millions of years. Lee grabbed the tendril that was touching him. It felt like ice and acid at the same time, but he held on. "You made one mistake," he said to the creature. The many mouths stopped whispering. "What mistake, little prey? You came to the wrong planet. You found the wrong species." Lee's anger was growing. He thought about the 50,000 colonists trapped inside this thing. He thought about all the other civilizations it had destroyed. He thought about how it had spent eons feeding on the suffering of innocent people. The creature tried to pull its tendril away, but Lee held on tighter. "Humans do not just feel fear. We get mad," Kim heard him. The terror in her eyes was still there, but now there was something else. Rage. She raised her weapon again, and this time it fired. The energy blast hit one of the creature's tendrils, and it screamed, "Yes!" Kim shouted. "That hurt, did it not?" Choi came running back into the chamber. He was carrying something from his toolkit. "If this thing feeds on fear," he said, "let us give it something else to chew on." He activated a plasma cutter. The bright flame lit up the chamber. Where the light touched the organic residue, it began to burn and smoke. Park was still trapped by a tendril, but she was fighting now instead of screaming. "The creature needs the residue to maintain its hold on this dimension," she called out. "If we destroy enough of it, we can hurt it badly." The creature's voices became angry. "You cannot fight what you cannot understand. You are insects. You are food? Maybe," Lee said, still holding the tendril. "But we are insects with weapons, and we are very good at killing things that try to eat us." He drew his sidearm with his free hand and emptied the entire clip into the creature's center mass. Each shot made it scream louder. The battle was just beginning. The creature had fed on fear for millions of years. It had consumed entire civilizations. But it had never faced humans before. It had never faced a species that got angry instead of giving up, that fought back instead of accepting death, that saw a cosmic horror and decided it was just another problem to solve. The chamber filled with the sound of weapons fire and the creature's screams. For the first time in eons, the predator was becoming the prey. And somewhere in the organic residue, the trapped colonists began to hope again. Captain Lee Daeho stood on the bridge of the TCS engine, watching the stars shift on the main screen. The ship had been traveling for 3 weeks now, heading toward a distant planet called Kepler 442b. It was not a pleasure trip. Something had gone wrong at New Busan Colony, and Lee's job was to find out what. The colony had gone silent 21 days ago. No messages, no emergency calls, no daily reports, just nothing. For a mining colony of 50,000 people, that was very bad news. The Terran Colonial Authority had tried everything. They sent radio signals. They tried emergency frequencies. They even sent automated probes. But New Busan stayed quiet. Lee was 42 years old and had been a ship captain for 15 years. He had seen pirates attack cargo ships. He had rescued people from broken space stations. He had even fought in the border wars against the Centauri rebels. But this felt different. This felt wrong. "Captain," called Lieutenant Kim Hana from her station, "we are approaching the Kepler system. ETA at a planetary orbit is 6 hours. Kim was young, maybe 28, but she was the best tactical officer Lee had ever worked with. She could read sensor data like other people read books. If something was hiding in space, Kim would find it. "Good," Lee said. "Any word from the colony?" "No, sir. Still nothing on any frequency." Dr. Park Ji-woo looked up from her computer. She was the ship's science officer and expert on alien life. The Colonial Authority had sent her along because they thought aliens might be involved. Lee hoped they were wrong. "Captain," Park said, "I have been studying the colony records. New Busan was built 5 years ago to mine rare metals. The planet has no native life forms, at least none that we know about. What kind of metals? Lee asked. Lithium, cobalt, and something called element 119. Very valuable for building faster-than-light engines. The colony was doing well. Their last report said they had found a new deposit deep underground. Engineer Choi Minho walked onto the bridge carrying a data pad. Choi was older than the others, maybe 50, with gray hair and careful hands. He could fix anything that broke and usually knew why it broke in the first place. "Captain," Choi said, "I have been looking at the colony's technical reports. Everything was normal until 3 weeks ago. Power systems, life support, mining equipment, all working fine. Then suddenly no reports at all." Lee nodded. "What could cause that?" "Equipment failure, maybe. A solar storm or..." Choi paused. "Or what? Or someone turned everything off on purpose." The bridge became quiet. Lee did not like that idea. Why would 50,000 people just stop talking to the outside universe? "Sir," Kim said, "long-range sensors are picking up the planet now. The colony's orbital defenses are strange." "Strange how?" Kim studied her screen. "They are still there, but they are not active. All the defense platforms are powered down. The satellites are drifting in wrong orbits. It looks like someone just turned them off." Lee felt a cold feeling in his stomach. Orbital defenses did not just turn off. They were too important. They protected colonies from asteroids and hostile ships. Turning them off meant leaving the colony helpless. "Any ships in the system?" Lee asked. "No, sir. We are alone. Keep scanning." Something that big does not just disappear. The hours passed slowly. Lee walked around the ship, checking on his crew. The Incheon was a military vessel with 80 people on board. Most of them were soldiers ready for trouble. But Lee hoped they would not need weapons. As they got closer to Kepler 442b, the sensors got better readings. The planet was brown and rocky with thin air. Not a nice place to live, but perfect for mining. The colony was built in a large crater near the equator, protected from the worst weather. "Captain," Park called out, "I am reading life signs from the colony." Lee hurried to her station. "How many?" "Hard to tell. The readings are weird. There are definitely people down there, but they are not where they should be. Most of the residential areas show no life signs. But there are groups of people in the mining tunnels. All of them? Maybe. The signals are too scattered to count exactly. That made no sense. Why would everyone go into the mines? The tunnels were dangerous. There were cave-ins and toxic gases. People lived in the surface buildings where it was safe." "Kim," Lee said, "any signs of fighting? Weapons fire? Explosions?" Kim checked her instruments. "No, sir. The colony looks completely undamaged. All buildings are intact. No burn marks, no debris. It looks normal except for the people." Choi looked at his own readings. Power systems are still working. Life support is active. Even the lights are on. Whatever happened, it was not an attack. Lee stared at the main screen. The planet grew larger as they approached. Soon he could see the colony itself, a cluster of white buildings and tall mining towers. It looked peaceful. It looked normal, but Lee knew it was not. "Take us into orbit," he ordered. The Incheon settled into position above New Busan. Lee could see the landing pads and the big machines used for mining. He could see roads and gardens and solar panels. Everything looked perfect except for one thing: no people. "Sir," Kim said quietly, "I am picking up something else." "What?" "There is a very weak signal coming from the colony. It might be a distress call, but it is badly damaged. Most of it is just static. Can you clean it up?" Kim worked at her station for several minutes. Finally, she shook her head. Only a few words. Something about help and coming and waiting. Lee felt that cold feeling again. A distress call about something coming. But coming from where? And waiting for what? "Park," he said, "prepare an away team. We are going down to the surface." "Sir," Choi said, "maybe we should send a drone first." Lee thought about that. It was the safe thing to do. The smart thing. But 50,000 people were missing and every hour could matter. "No," he said. "We go ourselves. But we go armed and we stay careful." As the away team prepared their equipment, Lee looked at the planet below. New Busan looked so normal from space. But Lee had learned to trust his instincts, and his instincts were screaming that something was very wrong. The shuttle bay doors opened, and the away team walked toward their ship. Lee followed them, carrying his weapon and hoping he would not need it. But deep down, he knew that hope was probably foolish. Something had happened to New Busan. Something bad enough to make 50,000 people disappear. And soon Lee and his team would find out what it was. The creature screamed as Captain Lee's bullets tore into its center mass. But the screams were not just sounds. They were waves of pure terror that hit everyone in the chamber like physical blows. Lieutenant Kim fell to her knees, but she kept firing her weapon. "It is trying to make us afraid again," she shouted over the noise. "Do not let it." Dr. Park pulled herself free from the tendril that had grabbed her. Her leg was burned where it had touched her, but she ignored the pain. "The creature is weakening," she called out. "Its hold on this dimension is getting unstable." Engineer Choi was moving around the chamber with his plasma cutter, burning away the organic residue from the walls. Every time he destroyed a patch of it, the creature screamed louder. "This stuff is like its nervous system," he said. "When I burn it, the whole thing feels pain." The creature's many mouths were speaking again, but now the words sounded desperate. "You do not understand. You cannot win. I have fed on galaxies. I have consumed civilizations older than your sun." "Maybe," Lee said, reloading his weapon, "but they probably asked nicely when they wanted you to stop." Lee was not asking nicely. None of them were. The cold feeling of despair was still trying to creep into their minds, but they were pushing it back with something stronger. Pure human stubbornness. Yoon Jae-min came out from behind the mining equipment. He was holding a mining laser. "I have been hiding for 3 weeks," he said. "I am tired of being afraid." He pointed the laser at the creature and fired. The beam cut through one of its tendrils, and the severed piece fell to the ground where it writhed like a dying snake. The creature tried a different approach. Instead of just sending fear, it began to show them images. Visions of their families dying. Pictures of Earth burning. Scenes of everyone they had ever cared about suffering and calling for help that would never come. Kim saw her younger brother being eaten by monsters. Choi saw his wife crying over his grave. Park saw her research destroyed and her discoveries forgotten. But Lee had dealt with psychological warfare before. "It is not real," he told his team. "It is just trying to break us. Remember why we are here." "Why are we here?" Kim asked, tears running down her face as she fought against the terrible images. "To save people," Lee said simply. "That is what humans do." Park wiped her eyes and looked at her scanner. "Captain, I am reading something interesting. The creature's energy signature is changing. It is becoming more stable in our dimension. Is that good or bad?" "Bad if it gets fully stable, but good because it means we can hurt it more. The more it exists in our reality, the more our weapons will work." Choi had burned away most of the residue from one wall. Now he was working on the ceiling. "If we can destroy enough of this stuff, maybe we can force it back to wherever it came from." The creature seemed to understand what they were planning. Its tendrils lashed out more desperately. One of them caught Lee across the chest and threw him against the wall. He felt ribs crack, but he got back up. "Is that all you have?" he asked the creature. "A cosmic monster that feeds on fear, and the best you can do is throw me around like a schoolyard bully?" The creature's voices became a roar of frustration. "I have destroyed species that span star systems. I have fed on the dying screams of entire worlds." "Yeah, well," Kim said, shooting another tendril. "You never met humans before." Jae-min was helping Choi burn away the residue. "There is something else," he said. "The creature has been using our communication equipment. It has been sending out signals to other colonies. Fake distress calls." Lee felt his anger grow even hotter. "It is trying to lure more people here." "Not just here," Park said, checking her readings. "Captain, I think it has been doing this across human space. Using our own emergency frequencies against us, that was too much." Lee had spent his entire career rescuing people in distress. The idea that something was using distress calls as bait made him furious beyond words. He walked straight toward the creature's center, ignoring the tendrils that tried to grab him. "You want to know what makes humans different?" he asked. The creature's many eyes focused on him. "Tell me, little insect. We do not just protect ourselves. We protect others. Even people we have never met. Even people who cannot protect themselves." Lee reached the base of the creature. Up close, he could see the trapped colonists more clearly. They were alive but barely conscious, suspended in the organic matrix that was slowly digesting them. "You made this personal when you started hurting innocent people," Lee said. He placed his hand on the creature's surface. It burned like acid, but he did not pull away. "What are you doing?" the creature asked. For the first time, its voices sounded worried. "Something you never learned to do," Lee said. "I am taking responsibility." He activated the emergency beacon on his uniform. It was designed to call for help if a soldier was in trouble. But Lee had modified the signal. Instead of asking for rescue, it was broadcasting a warning to every human ship and colony in range. "This is Captain Lee Daeho of the TCS Incheon," he said into the beacon. "We have encountered a hostile entity that feeds on distress signals. Do not answer any emergency calls from the Kepler system. Repeat, do not respond to distress calls from this area." The creature realized what he was doing. "No, you will ruin the hunt." "The feeding." "Good," Lee said. The creature lashed out with all its remaining strength. Tendrils wrapped around Lee's arms and legs. It began to pump him full of visions of failure and death, but Lee had one more surprise. He was not just broadcasting a warning. He was broadcasting his anger, his determination, his refusal to give up. And across human space, other ships heard it. Other captains and soldiers and engineers who understood that sometimes you had to fight monsters. The creature felt them coming. Dozens of ships changing course toward Kepler 442b. Not to answer a distress call, but to answer a call to war. For the first time in millions of years, the predator realized it might have bitten off more than it could chew. The humans were not just fighting back. They were bringing friends. The shuttle landed softly on the New Busan spaceport. Captain Lee stepped out first, his weapon ready. The air was thin but breathable. The sky was gray with heavy clouds. Everything looked normal, but Lee could feel that something was very wrong. Lieutenant Kim followed him, scanning the area with her equipment. "No immediate threats, sir, but I'm reading some strange energy signatures." Dr. Park came next, carrying her scientific instruments. She immediately knelt down and touched the ground. "The soil feels different. There is something mixed in with it. Something organic." Engineer Choi was last, pulling a cart of tools and sensors. He looked at the empty landing pad and shook his head. "There should be ground crew here. Always. Someone always meets incoming ships." The spaceport was completely empty. No people, no vehicles, no sounds except the wind. But everything was in perfect order. The lights were on. The doors were open. Even the coffee machine in the waiting area was still warm. Lee led his team toward the main colony buildings. Their boots echoed loudly in the empty streets. The houses were neat and clean. Gardens were watered and growing, but no one was home. "Look at this," Kim said, pointing to a house. The front door was open. Inside, they could see a table set for dinner. The food was still there, but it was 3 weeks old and spoiled. Park examined the door frame with her scanner. "Captain, there is something here, a kind of residue. It is organic, but not from any Earth life form." "What does that mean?" "I do not know yet, but it is covering almost everything. Very thin, like a film. You can barely see it, but it is everywhere." They walked deeper into the colony. Every building told the same story. People had just stopped what they were doing and left. Clothes were scattered on floors. Books were left open. Children's toys lay abandoned in yards. Choi checked the power station. "Everything is working normally. Full power, all systems green. Someone wanted to keep the colony running." "But where did everyone go?" Lee asked. Kim checked her readings. "The life signs are all coming from the mining area, about 2 kilometers that way." She pointed toward a group of tall metal towers in the distance. As they walked toward the mines, Park kept taking readings. "The organic residue is getting thicker. And Captain, there is something else. It seems to react when we get close to it." "React how?" "It glows a little brighter. Like it knows we are here." Lee did not like the sound of that. He had Park take a sample of the residue. Under her portable microscope, it looked like tiny threads woven together, but the threads moved slightly even though there was no wind. They reached the mining complex. The towers were huge machines that dug deep into the planet's crust. Normally they would be running day and night, pulling valuable metals from underground, but today they were silent. Choi checked the control room. The machines were shut down manually 3 weeks ago. Someone turned them off from inside the main computer. Why would they do that? Lee asked. I do not know. But look at this. Choi showed them the computer screen. There is a message in the system. It says they answered. They are here, going to meet them. Park frowned. Who answered? Answered what? Kim was studying her tactical display. Captain, I am reading a much stronger energy signature from the main mining shaft. Whatever's down there, it is big. Lee looked at the shaft entrance. It was a wide tunnel that went straight down into the rock. Emergency lighting marked the way, but beyond the first few meters, everything was dark. Sir, Choi said quietly, there is something else. The computer shows that someone sent a distress signal from here 3 weeks ago, but it was not sent to the Terran Colonial Authority. Who was it sent to? I do not know. The signal was broadcast in all directions, into deep space. Lee felt his heart beating faster. A distress signal sent into space, a message about someone answering, and 50,000 people who walked into a dangerous mine shaft and never came back out. We need to go down there, Lee said. Sir, Kim said, my readings show the energy signature is moving, getting stronger. Park was studying the organic residue on the walls. It is much thicker here, and Captain, I think it is not just covering things. I think it is digesting them, very slowly. Digesting what? Everything. The metal, the rock, the air. This stuff is breaking down matter at the molecular level. Before Lee could respond, they heard a sound from deep in the shaft. It was not a mechanical sound. It was organic, like something very large breathing. Kim raised her weapon. Something is moving down there. Choi checked his instruments. The air in the shaft has changed. More oxygen, but also gases I cannot identify. Park's scanner started beeping rapidly. The residue is reacting, all of it, like it is waking up. Lee made a decision. We go down, but we stay together and we stay ready. They entered the shaft. The tunnel was wide enough for mining vehicles, but now it was empty, except for the organic residue coating everything. Emergency lights cast strange shadows on the walls. As they went deeper, the air became warmer. The organic residue glowed brighter, and the breathing sound got louder. Captain, Kim whispered, motion sensors are picking up movement ahead, something very large. They reached a junction where the tunnel split into 3 directions. Park checked her readings. The life signs are coming from the left tunnel, all of them. Lee led them left. The tunnel opened into a huge underground chamber. It was part of the mining operation, a place where the machines had dug out valuable metals. But now it looked completely different. The chamber was filled with the organic residue. It covered the walls like skin. It hung from the ceiling like curtains. And in the center of the chamber, something was moving. It was huge and dark. Lee could not see exactly what it was because the residue covered most of it. But he could see that it was alive, and he could see shapes inside it. Human shapes. The colonists. Park whispered. They are inside that thing. The creature seemed to notice them. The breathing sound stopped. Then, very slowly, something that might have been a head turned toward them. Kim raised her weapon, but Lee stopped her. Wait. From somewhere in the shadows they heard a voice. A human voice, weak and terrified. Help. Please. Do not. Come closer. Lee saw him then, a man hiding behind some mining equipment. He was thin and dirty, and his eyes were wild with fear. Who are you? Lee called out. Yoon Jae-min. I worked here. I am the only one left. The only one who did not go to it. What is that thing? Jae-min looked at the creature and started shaking. We sent a signal. We needed help. The mines were collapsing. People were trapped. We sent a distress call into space. And something answered. But it was not help. It was hungry. It feeds on. Jamin started crying. It feeds on fear, on suffering. We called for help, and we brought a monster. The creature in the center of the chamber made a sound. It was not breathing anymore. It was something else, something that sounded almost like laughter. Lee looked at his team. They were trapped underground with something that ate fear itself. And above them, somewhere in space, his ship was waiting with no idea what was coming for them next.